You're thinking about I. It's very ego focused. And as a leader, it's not about you. One thing that you'll learn, my philosophy in leadership, is it's not about me. So first thing I would ask you to do is just stop focusing on you and start focusing on the team.
What else would you like to leave our listeners with? I know we talked about a bunch of great stuff, but is there one specific thing?
What I would hope everybody does is
success is an extremely misunderstood concept. We all want success, but have you ever really sat down and asked yourself, what does success actually mean to you? This lack of awareness can prevent you from performing at your best. Welcome to the Learn It All podcast, the show for today's leaders who want to get ahead and stay ahead because we believe great leaders aren't born or made, we're always in the making. I'm your host, Damon Lemby, two-time best-selling author and CEO of Learn It, a live learning platform that has helped upskill over 2 million people over the past 3 decades. Today's guest is JM Ryerson. He's a serial entrepreneur, performance coach, author, and the founder of Let's Go Win, a company dedicated to helping high performers live their best lives both personally and professionally. In our conversation today, I'm going to ask JM to share how to reshape your view on both success and failure, when you should let go of a goal without seeing it as quitting, what every first-time leader needs to hear about imposter syndrome, and how to define and embed powerful core values at work and at home. So JM, even super successful people get stuck carrying around old beliefs. What is like one old belief you've held on to for too long? And what was the final wake-up call that got you to kind of flip the script?
You know, it's a good question. And the biggest one that I've sat on that I had to really lean into was around money. So I was very blessed. I made 7 figures my first time at the age of 27. And you would think that's something to celebrate and be like, awesome, what an achievement. Brother, I looked in the mirror and I felt terrible. I had this self-limiting belief around money that was for other people, that somehow that was an evil. And that took me probably 5 years of really digging in to say, why do I believe that? Is it true? And then ultimately, where'd that come from? And here's what I landed on. My dad, when we would drive by the country club, he would say, look at all the pretty people. For some reason, Damon, being a pretty person was a bad thing, but the connotation.
I get it.
And so it was always just these little remarks. And so I had this thing about making money somehow. Again, I told you off air, I was raised in Montana. You're taught to be humble and not talk about yourself, or at least that was certainly my upbringing. And so when I made this money, I was like, gosh, I looked in the mirror and I literally felt terrible. And then I finally just decided, as I went through, and my dad taught me that. Well, his dad taught him that. Guess what? His dad taught him that. So if you go back, this is literally a mindset from the early 1900s, and I'm still adopting it. Just think how crazy that is. And so I finally said, this is shenanigans. And I'm going to, reframe the way I look at it. And the truth is, money is a great thing because you can support charities and you can build companies and create opportunities. All of these things happen. Why I thought it was evil at one point, I don't know, but that's gone. And so that's the one that I held on to way too long.
Did you miss any big opportunities or miss out or make any bad decisions because of holding on to that belief?
Yeah, no question. I think most people, when you don't have a lot of money and then you all of a sudden do, you make some poor choices. And I certainly did. I remember we had a cabin up in Truckee, California, near Lake Tahoe.
Love Truckee.
And it's a great spot, no question about it. But it was just one of those decisions that wasn't thought through. We weren't using it that often. It literally became this extra cost on like extra stress. And we literally do all our vacations to this one spot because it was this purchase that just didn't make a lot of sense. We had young kids at the time. And so, yeah, man, I made all sorts of poor decisions along the way. And then I started to realize, it's not even about the money for me. It's my biggest value in life is freedom. I didn't like being chained down to this one spot. And if my wife wasn't willing to VRBO it or, rent it out, then it's literally just a drain on our bank account for no reason. And it's just additional stuff that I had to do. So that's the one that sticks out to me. But well, shoot, man. My business partner and I started a mortgage company in 2008. So there's
Good
another $1
timing.
million plus down the drain. Like, I got some good ones, man. I've made some mistakes.
When I started researching you, what I loved about you is that you're just open, I think, kind of like me, like to talk about, because hey, look, we've all made mistakes. And I think learning from those mistakes is what helps us grow. And if we can help other people, I call it dummy tax. If we can share with them some of our experiences and stories and the mistakes we've made, it's only going to help them, moving forward.
No, it's so true, brother. Isn't it interesting how in the moment it sucks? Like, I don't care what hardship you're going through. Anybody saying, oh, this is a great learning lesson, I get it. You're like, I don't want to hear that right now. But when you look back, those are the ones that really were impactful. And those are the things that, as awful as it is in the moment, you really want to say thank you because, yeah, I want people to learn from my mistakes. And you know what? My kids are going to make some of the same mistakes I did. And that's okay because that's just part of living. Imagine if it was perfect. What a boring way to live life. It really wouldn't be that exciting.
Yeah. I mean, one thing I learned is that everything doesn't happen the way you anticipated it or wanted it, right? I thought I was going to be a Major League Baseball player, have 4 kids, and have my best friend, my dad, around. And he passed away 14 years ago of cancer, right? So things come up in life and you have to just deal with them and get back up and make it happen, So
isn't that funny, man, how we have these expectations or we think about, like, I used to make 5-year goals. And literally I did it so in my professional life, the first at 5 years, 4 times. I was dead wrong all 4 times. 3 out of the 4, I had exceeded my expectations. 1 out of the 5-year, I under achieved. But it's funny how they're just kind of, you put this thing out there, which, why? I'm not saying don't have goals. You certainly should, but just kind of play it out, man, and be okay with where you're at and know that you're actually probably going through what you're supposed to at that moment. There's a reason for it. So it is funny, man. Life just throws us some funny curveballs, to use baseball. It's one of those things where it's not going to be perfect. That's not the way life works. And you know what? Thank goodness for that. How boring it truly would be if everything went exactly as you planned.
When do you think that it's okay to like pivot and give up on a goal? Like say you're holding on to things too long. And, when hearing you talk, I've got buddies, well, not now because I'm in my 50s, but they held on to that dream of playing Major League Baseball for much too long and they missed some good opportunities. When is it okay, do you think, to say, hey, you know what? It's not really a failure to quit this and move into this different phase of life?
Man, this is a big question. And I don't know that I have the great answer because I don't believe really in quitting. And I would say when you're at a point that you really don't enjoy it. So here's my example. My second company, it was 6 years of literally waking up and dreading going to work every single day. That was not a good time. Yes, financially, it was fantastic. But personally, my wife and I were separated for a year. Literally thought we were going to get divorced. Thank goodness we didn't. And literally 6 years because I wasn't aligned with the other business partners in the company. Doesn't make them bad. But I guess my point is, I think it's okay to quit when you no longer feel joy and fulfillment doing what you're doing. Now, I'm not saying, you know what, you had a bad day, so you should just throw in the towel and quit your job. Like, don't do that. You're going to have bad days. But if consistently, like your buddies, if they're waking up and the dream is to be a pro baseball player, but they're not loving it anymore, I think that's time to say, you know what, I'm not enjoying it. Now, I love the fact that they saw it through and they can look back and say, I gave it everything that I had, man. I have lived with no regrets, at least towards that dream. I love that they can say that because I think where people make this mistake, they'll quit too early because, oh man, it got a little hard. And you know what? This is the easier. Well, easier doesn't necessarily mean better. So it's a big question, brother. And we could go back and forth on this one subject for quite a while.
When basketball ended for you, was that a big hit to your identity? Because I know it was for me with baseball.
Yeah. So, and it happened earlier than I expected as well, Damon. You couldn't convince me, brother, I wasn't going to play in the NBA. It wasn't, even after 2 knee surgeries in high school, I'm like, no, man, I got this. Look, the third knee surgery, that's where it really set in like, oh, okay. So I probably wasn't that good anyway. I mean, those guys are phenomenal. And I was a
Totally.
good basketball player, but not to the level they are. It in reality, if you look at it. But yeah, it was a major hit for me because, I was known as JM the athlete all my life. And then all of a sudden, I'm just JM, the kid going to school. So that was a big moment at about 21 years old where I'm saying, oh, so now I'm just this normal college kid, right? Which who cares? But in the moment, it was a big deal. I remember thinking that was such a big deal. And so I actually ended up studying abroad during that time of my life. And I had this almost year-long process of being able to just be with me and my thoughts, cruising around Europe on trains, eating PBJs because I had no money. But I got a chance to really look and say, what do I want out of life? What is important to me? And if it's not going to be in athletics, what is that going to look like? I didn't necessarily arrive at any answers other than, you know what? I found books and I found learning, which is why I told you off air, I love the name of your podcast. I really fell in love with this idea of growth and development. And that just shaped my identity to be something different than what I was as an athlete, but yet applying some of the same principles.
What was your first step into the business world after traveling abroad?
So when I came back, I ended up graduating way faster than I expected because if you look at my college, I did 3 different colleges in 4 years, somehow graduated with 2 degrees. And it's like, I didn't expect to graduate. I thought I was going for at least another year. So I ended up moving from Montana to Northern California, and I started working for Enterprise Rent-A-Car. And I was there for almost 3.5 years. And it's a great company. What I realized for me, though, is I didn't like people telling me where I could be and how much I could make. That just, again, freedom is my favorite F word in the world. I love freedom. And I realized, you know what? This isn't necessarily filling my bucket. I want to find something that provides that. And so I went from Enterprise, and then I met what ended up being my future business partner for the next 3 companies on my next interview. And it happened to be being an entrepreneur, and I found my rhythm and groove pretty quickly. So yeah, man, from enterprise into financial service world, and that's where it started, really taking off and as an entrepreneur.
And I love how, switching gears a little bit, I heard you talk about, you wrote your book, Let's Go Win, and how you were inspired by your kids to write it.
Yeah, man, I had been talking about writing this book for almost 3 years. And literally, we were talking about goals earlier. I put all my goals in my bathroom mirror. It's visible to my whole family. And my son at the time, he walked by and he goes, "Dad, how's the book going?" And I'll never lie to my kids. And I had to shamelessly look at him and go, I literally have a little bit of chapter 1 done. And he absolutely destroyed me and inspired me in the same moment. So, because the whole idea of the book was I wanted my kids to have some of the philosophies I had learned from my parents and grandparents and authors that I had read. And so within 6 months, I finished the book and it changed the trajectory of my life. I mean, Let's Go Win is really, it is my life at this point, right? It's a company, yes, but it's also the podcast and it's a philosophy and it's something I'm so passionate about. And so, yeah, man, I wrote it for the kids. And the only reason the world knows about it is because I had somebody, thank goodness, she said, "Man, you're selfish." And I said, "What are you talking about?" She said, "If you only share this book with 2 people, you're selfish." And I said, "Yeah, yep, I hear you." Published a book, and it's just been a wild ride since.
I hear you talking about, it's your philosophy, it's your passion. So what is your philosophy, especially around winning?
It's such a good question, brother. So I had to go down and really figure this out because, again, being athletes, we grow up winning, losing, right? That was the idea. You either won or you lost. That is not the philosophy of Let's Go Win. The philosophy of Let's Go Win is literally to inspire yourself, inspire to live your best life. That's literally the entire philosophy of the company. Now, that doesn't mean I win, you lose. In fact, what I had to figure out, people kept asking, what does winning mean? What does winning mean? And I started looking up what winning meant. And you're going to see the same word over and over again when you look up winning: self-development, self-growth, self-discipline, self-love, self-care. And this word self is there. And so now it's all, in my opinion, based on self, which is strength, energy, love, and freedom. It's an acronym, and emotional, mental, and physical side of things. And so to me, what winning means is literally setting yourself up to win every single day. That doesn't mean you're going to succeed every day. I fail all the time, man. But I'm willing to get back up. And so for me, winning is literally inspiring people to live their best lives, setting myself up every single day so I can show up as the best version of me, and being okay when I fall on my face, knowing that I gave it my very best and I'm willing to get back up. And so that's the overall philosophy that I teach. And it's something that what I love, Damon, is when people are like, gosh, that literally helped me so much in this area. That fills my bucket so much more than, I don't know, an extra zero in my bank account.
Isn't it nice, to feel like you've actually contributed and made a difference? I got a nice text from a woman who's running she raised a bunch of money and she's running a student loan crushed debt. And she just said, "Hey, I just wanted to say thanks for the impact you've helped me at, when I started my career at Learn It." That, like you said, that's just sometimes means so much more than even money, So it's awesome.
You're just sharing, I imagine, things that you learned, and you want somebody else to have it a little bit easier or have open their eyes to a new perspective. It's just, that's the beauty of writing these books or doing these programs, is so that other people can win. And that's what's been fascinating with Let's Go Win is I have created so many partnerships with different companies, because it's not jmryerson.com. It's not like JM's going to get 100% and you get zero. No, man, I want to share in this. I want to create and collaborate, because as an athlete, as kids, I love being on a team, right? I was actually, the best sport I did, Damon, most people don't know this. The best sport was, I was a swimmer, and it wasn't even close, brother. I was really, really talented in that, but it was an individual sport and I didn't enjoy it. I love basketball. I love baseball, football, soccer, all the sports that are team. And that's what Let's Go Win. It's all about collaborating. That fills my bucket so much more than if it's just, JM doing something by himself.
A lot of our listeners are parents, right? And they have kids. And what advice do you have for them when it comes to playing sports for their kids, getting them involved? Because, these days, a lot of kids aren't involved. They're too busy on a laptop, an iPad, right? But what advice do you have for parents about getting their kids involved, and how will that help with their future growth?
So we have a rule in our house, and some people don't agree with it. That's okay. And that is, you're going to play a sport. If you live under our roof, you're going to play a sport. Now, mind you, I'm not telling you that you have to be the best in that sport. That's not the point. The point is, I want you to be involved in some form of athletics. So what I would tell parents is, sports are incredible. They teach us so much. They teach us resilience. They teach us leadership. They teach us teamwork. They teach us failure. There's so many learning lessons. I don't know of a negative behind doing sports. Now, is it maybe a little more difficult and expensive for parents? Yeah. My son plays tennis at Marquette. My other boy plays very competitive baseball. And is it really a stress-inducing? At times, man, because it's not easy watching your kids fail, and yet it's some of the best lessons that they've learned. So I would just tell parents, you know what, get them involved. I don't care how good they are. Just let them get out there and be involved in an activity. If it's not a sport, that's fine. My wife played tennis in college. I play basketball. So we are sports people, but it's just, and enjoy it. That's one thing that I think we used to stress a little bit with our older one about UTR and all these rankings. Now we just live in the moment with him, and we enjoy it, and we get to watch him go compete at his, what he's passionate about. So I would just tell parents to enjoy it, get them involved, and just support them, because it goes by like that, man. My 18-year-old, I remember he was just a baby, and it feels like yesterday.
I think some of the best times of my life was being out on the field with my dad and my grandfather and my family there. And my advice also as well to parents is let the kids have fun with it. Don't jump in and try to control everything all the time. I coached a high school team once, and I was like, this is ridiculous having to deal with the parents. Let the kids have fun, learn and grow, and make mistakes with it as well.
Yeah, man, you saw it. Unfortunately, that's the part of the parents trying to live their glory days or thinking that their kid is the greatest end all be all. Look, maybe they are, but let them have their journey. It's theirs. It's not for you to curate and make sure it's perfect. That doesn't exist. Let them go out there and fail. It's some of the best lessons that they're going to have. And it's never easy. As parents, you want to protect your kids, but I'm telling you, they are resilient, they're tough, and it teaches them so much that they're going to have to deal with in life anyway,
And how similar do you think it is to running an organization where you have employees, right? So we're not talking about your kids here, but you have employees, setting them up in an environment that gives them an opportunity to try things and fail and be okay with it.
It's fascinating how many similarities and how you literally can run an organization from a little league baseball team to a professional organization to the Fortune 500 company. The principles are pretty much all the same. You want to be clear on why you're doing whatever you're doing, how you're supposed to behave, what are the cultural values, and what are we trying to accomplish. If you look at a little league organization, you look at a business, or you look at an NFL team, they literally all have the exact same setup. The challenge I have, Damon, and this is the part where I want to help so many people, is not everybody learned that stuff. They've been on teams, because ultimately those are all teams, and the leaders was really dynamic. So maybe they got away with not being clear on how they're supposed to act or behave. And then I've been on some horrible teams because of that. And so what I would say is it's almost identical. The playbook is just the same. It's literally, one is in the corporate world, one is in, playing a sport. And there's the same playbook if you're willing to just, and I call it the one sheet. That's what I teach every company, every sports organization that I work with. We're going to get clear on what that one sheet is. And what you'll see is you're going to start to rack up more and more wins and successes. And the only reason is because you're focused in the same, you're rowing the boat in the same direction versus one person going this way and that person going that way. So yeah, man, it's amazing how much they cross over.
In my research on you, again, I've heard you talk a lot about, the importance of core values and really hiring for people with those core values and setting clear direction for them. Can you share a little bit about your experience with that and how you help, I guess, business leaders set that up and accelerate it?
Yeah. So I am passionate about this, and not only for just companies, but like our family, we have 3 core values: courage, fun, and love. Right.
Okay.
And so those are the things that we celebrate. Those are the things that are core to our DNA as a family. But what I experienced, and I have to own it because I was the one that did it. Same company, second company, we had 6 core values. And I'm literally on stage, Damon, in front of about 1,500 people or so. And I'm rallying the troops up, talking about our core values. And I got to 4 and I forgot the last 2. And it's funny now, but in the moment, it was really embarrassing because I'm one of the executives that was in the room that came up with these 6 core values. But it was one of the best lessons I could have had, because if I can't remember them, how can I ask any of the employees to remember them? And so what I learned is it's just too many. And so what I would suggest to anybody out there, if you're not clear on your core values, know that you're not alone. 99% of companies aren't clear on what their core values are. And here's the other thing. If you have more than 3, the law of diminishing return starts to go into play. And so I teach companies and corporations and teams, let's get to our 3 core values. And so let's go win. It's happy, healthy, wealthy. Those are the 3 core values. Now, when I first started the company, it was transcend, fun, and love. But I realized that transcend meant a whole bunch to me, but it didn't mean a lot to my team. and it didn't mean a lot to the clients that I was working with. And so I had to really dig deep and say, what do our clients really want? They want to be happy. That's the one thing I've found in all of they want to be healthy and they want to be wealthy. And then I was like, why are you making this difficult? These are your core values. This is how you want to show up. This is who you are. And so once we did that, everything became so much easier. Clients started showing up. They were the right clients because they were attracted to what we stood for. So if you're not clear on them, here's what I would ask you to do. Get clear on what your 3 core values are and then share it with your team every single day.
What I heard you say is with Transcend, I think it was, is that, yeah, maybe it meant something to you, but maybe your team didn't connect with it or your customers. And I think it's really important that that your core values, that your people buy into it, and then that it means something to them, right? Because if it means something to them, then it's more than then there's a bigger picture than just, hey, coming to work, getting a paycheck, because they're bought into the core values.
So true. It literally your core values, that word core, it has to be literally core to your DNA. And so transcend was one of those things where I always had to explain what transcend meant to me. And it didn't work. And so I finally had to say, wait a minute, JM, this is literally what you're coaching on. Your own company's not clear on the core values. Once we step back, you're exactly right, man. Everybody bought in. They're like, oh yeah, happy, healthy, wealthy. That's what I want. Cool. Now we're in alignment. Now the coaching makes it that much easier. And it's funny, like we were talking about, one of those mistakes. I'm so glad I made this mistake because now I won't make it again for the next company that I'm working with or the next organization. Let's be clear on what is important to everyone systemically through your organization.
So across the board, what do you think are we already talked about core values, but what do you think are some of the most important leadership qualities that either a CEO or the leadership team needs to have?
Yeah, gosh, what a great question. So, I've landed on several, but here's what I would say. I think being empathetic is one of the most important things that a leader can do. And this would be the one that I work on every single day because I don't think naturally empathy comes easy to me. Because when I was early in business, Damon, I would just, no matter what, we're going to win. We're going to hit our goals. And I really didn't care what it looked like, no matter how much, it was, you were sacrificing at home, including, like I said, almost sacrificing my own marriage. And I realized there's got to be a better way. So empathy is one. The second is to have courage. As a leader, you need to have the courage to know that you're not everybody's best friend, that you're going to make some tough decisions and not everybody's going to agree with that. And that's by human nature. People want to be liked, but as a leader, oftentimes it's not going to always come across that way. And you have to learn to be okay with that. And then the third thing I would say is communication, the ability to communicate your vision, to communicate what's happening in the organization, to really have that radical transparency, something that Ray Dalio talks about in his books. I think that is so important because people can deal with pretty much anything other than the unknown. If you don't communicate, that's when problems start to happen. Even if you're communicating something tough, people can usually deal with it. But if you're not communicating anything, the unknown, then things start to spin out of control.
JM, I'm 100% with you on the transparency. But I've had people come to me and say, Damon, don't you think you shared a little too much, whether it's around numbers or whatnot? Where do you draw the line when it comes to transparency with your organization?
Yeah, I don't really. And I know that makes some people uncomfortable. Now, here's what I would say. I don't come in and one of the rules we also have is when you do a meeting, right? I believe in the AEIO, and this will answer your question. So I stand for issues. I'm okay with people having issues, but you need to have a solution behind it. So for instance, if, I don't know, let's just say I woke up today and it was a bad day, I'm not going to go complain to my company, tell you how horrible my day is, because what is that serving? What is that doing? Now, if I have a solution behind it, like, oh, I stubbed my toe and my solution was to move the dresser so I don't do that, whatever it's a bad example, but that's where I draw the line is, are you just complaining? Is this serving any purpose at all? Because if it's not, then that's just sharing too much. But when it comes to sharing personal matters, I do. I've talked about, the death of my dad and what that looked like. I'm very open with these things. For some people, that's too much, but for me, that's allowing, letting people in. And what I learned in my professional life, when you're vulnerable, that really lets people buy into who you are, where you're going. And I wasn't that way for a long time. So I'm pretty open with everything, unless it's just complaining. There's no reason to do that.
Yeah, I haven't met too many great leaders who are victims, or blaming others all the time. And I believe in chapter 1 in your book, you talk a lot about vulnerability and authenticity. How do you go about it, being vulnerable and authentic, but not coming across as weak?
What's interesting about vulnerability is I would have said early in my career, that's weakness, right? You put on the face, and I was taught boys don't cry, which, by the way, is absolutely terrible, ridiculous advice. And what I learned is that's really not, I'm not saying go cry every single day or, show, but that's a very basic human emotion. And so the moment that I let people in, that's when people really started to believe in who I was as a leader. But when you put up this facade, like everything's perfect and we're just gonna, you have to look a certain way, act a certain way, it's just not relatable, first off, and it's not very effective. So when I finally said, you know what, I'm willing to share who I am wholly with these people, because there's good, there's bad, and they're ugly about everybody in the world. Nobody has a perfect life. So why do we even pretend for it to be that way? And just be okay and owning those warts, if you will, because that's a part of who you are. The moment I did that, and this literally again happened at the end of the second company, everything took off. Leadership became easier, numbers became easier. Just it wasn't such hard work because I was able to just be my authentic self, put my energy into that instead of trying to look or sound or be something that I really wasn't.
We work with a lot of first-time managers, new leaders, right? So they either get promoted from being an individual contributor to a first-time manager or coming out from an organization. And a lot of them either are stressed or afraid to be their authentic self because they don't want to come across as not having all the answers. What practical advice do you give for somebody stepping into a first-time leadership role? Because guys like you and maybe guys like me, like where we've had some success, it's great. Yeah, sure. We can be vulnerable, be our authentic self, but how do we help those leaders, those first-time leaders become more vulnerable and authentic?
That's a great question. There's a quote that has served me when it comes to this question. People don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. And that has shown up for me time and time again with leaders. If you had all the right answers, but you genuinely don't care about the person that you're providing them to, it doesn't matter. And so it's also, nobody knows all the answers. Like we said, that's impractical. So what I would tell these people is just to try your best to be interested in your people, truly give a care about them, not just their numbers and how they perform, but actually pour into them and watch how well that's received and watch how much more they're going to believe in you as a leader. So it is one of those funny things, Damon, because it is kind of an evolution that most people don't step into leadership and go, here I am. I'm just going to be as open and honest as I can be, because that's kind of a scary idea. But I think the more that you can just say, you know what, I'm going to genuinely care about the people I'm working with. I'm going to share who I am, just like I would in any relationship. I'm going to build some real relationships that people can follow. That's when your leadership will take off, and it just becomes so much easier.
Yeah, and especially in the world we live in today, a lot of people call it like a post-trust world. If you can get people to trust you, like you said, if you want people to trust you, they got to be able to trust you first, right? So things work out so much better. Now, what about somebody who's a new manager who maybe has these limiting beliefs like, hey, I know I got promoted, but deep down, JM, they're thinking to themselves, do I even belong here? I don't even know if I'm capable of doing this. How do you help that individual?
Yeah. So the first thing if I was talking to this individual, stop thinking about yourself. Everything that Damon just explained, if you look at the way it's being framed, you're thinking about I. And as a leader, it's not about you. One thing that you'll learn my philosophy in leadership is it's not about me. So if I'm saying all these I statements like imposter syndrome, I shouldn't be this leader. Well, if you look at you're saying I first, it's very ego focused. So the first thing I would ask you to do is just stop focusing on you and start focusing on the team. And once you do that, then you stop being inside your head. You stop thinking about your ego and you start focusing on the team. It's amazing how it just all of a sudden people start to respond. The other thing that I would say, and this is something that it was written about years ago on how to win friends and influence people. In order to be interesting, you have to be interested. And what that means to me as a leader is truly be interested in the people that you're working with. Not, again, their position, not just are they hitting their metrics. Who are they as people? Do they have family? What are their passions? What are they looking to accomplish? If you do that, it's amazing how now they look at you as someone of leadership that they respect and they trust. And as Damon said, that's going to help build that trust immediately.
And I think one of the key traits for great leaders is curiosity. And, and you were just talking about it right there, right? So, be curious, ask questions, get to know your employees a little bit, right? I mean, because I know you talk a lot about how you've helped companies double their revenue, but a lot of that, maybe you could talk about this a little bit, a lot about that is through being a people-first organization and taking care of your people.
It is interesting because, I say often, I sell people what they want, then I give them what they need. And when it comes to these organizations, we'll start with, okay, we're going to double their revenue. Cool. But how we do that is 100% like you just said, we're going to do it on focusing on you holistically. So for instance, if you're a leader and your relationships are a mess, your health is a disaster, how effective can you be as a leader long-term? Not very. And so the majority of my work actually with a lot of executives is spent on how is your relationships at home? How is your health? Are you taking care of your body? Because if you can't show up with the most amount of energy, if you can't show up in a way that your mindset's in a positive place, you're not going to be a very effective leader. At least long term, you won't. So it is interesting, Damon, how it's always like numbers and people want to, let's crunch these. Cool, we're going to do that, but we're going to succeed probably different than you thought, because we're going to start with, what does your daily routine look like? Do you take care of yourself first so you can show up as the best leader? And those are most of the conversations and systems that I put into place.
I know you've got a great daily routine. Can you share a little bit about your morning routine?
Yeah, it is funny because mine's extensive. So I'll give you the short version. I actually created something called the perfect morning routine, and it's 33 total minutes. The first 11 minutes is just breath work. And that is, if you're not familiar, Wim Hof would be probably the easiest guy to follow. But there's all sorts of different breath work out there now. And it's just 11 minutes of concentrated breath work to really fill the body. Okay, cool. Then I do 11 minutes of meditation. Some people like guided, some people like music, some people like, solfeggio frequencies. It doesn't really matter. Just 11 minutes of you time, just kind of letting your mind go. And then 11 minutes of yoga. And I do a minute and a half for each chakra. There's 7 total chakras. And that ends up being 11 total minutes. And when I do that, Damon, it's amazing. Immediately after those 33 minutes, I can tackle any problem. I can deal with pretty much anything that's going on. But if I don't get that in, man, I got to tell you, I'm not at my highest level. And so that's something that I teach people, to take care of your mind, your body, and your soul every single morning. And that's how I created the perfect morning routine.
And what advice do you have for people who start and stop, right? Because it's only going to work if you get consistent with it. So how do you find yourself being more consistent with it?
Yeah, and this is the trick. You're absolutely right. So people all the time, they're like, "How did you become a life coach?" And I'll go, "That's a good question." if you said lifestyle coach, then I'm in, because that's ultimately what I want to create is lifestyle. So how do you get away from starting and stopping? Know that for the first 90 days, it's going to be a lot of effort. And literally, it's something that you're going to need to be intentional with. So, like The Power of Habit, or is a great book to read, or Atomic Habits seems to be most people's favorite habit read. But what they'll tell you is start to take on the identity, set yourself up for success the night before. And ultimately, for me, write down whatever that goal is and put it in your bathroom mirror. So you see it every single day, at least twice a day when you're brushing your teeth. When you do that, you're far more likely not to stop than if you just said, I want to lose 20 pounds. Okay. The likelihood of you losing 20 pounds is not very good unless you write that down and you look at it every single day. Because life's going to happen, right? You're going to have your girlfriend to break up with you, and you're going to have the child that gets sick, and something in the world is going to happen. Adversity is going to strike. And that's when we fall back into our old habits. And so being intentional about it, writing it down and looking at it, that's going to help you every day to go, oh yeah, I'm working out every single day. And after 90 days, the reason I say 90 days is because then it just becomes part of your routine. Now it's just habitual. Like that morning routine, I don't even have to think about it because it's just part of what I do. But in the first 90 days, I had to be extremely intentional. I had to look at what each yoga pose was. Well, now I can do it without even thinking about it because it's just part of who I am.
One of the things you said in there was setting yourself up for success. And where do you think about luck? As we kind of wrap up here, do you think people are lucky, or do you think high achievers create their own luck?
Yes, great question. I'm so glad you asked this. They've done so many different studies. They've done it on newspapers. But my favorite one that I remember is they were in London and they put a 20-pound note or $20 bill for Americans on the sidewalk. And before people walked down the sidewalk, they asked, do you feel you're lucky? Now, of this particular study, 10 people said six of them said they were lucky. All 6 found the note, the dollar bill. The 4 people that said they weren't lucky, all of them walked right past it. And so I don't believe that people are genuinely lucky. I think that they create that own luck by being grateful, by recognizing the amazing opportunities that are out there. If you are focused on negativity, you're going to continue to find negativity. If you're focused on positivity, then you're going to really bring that positivity to you. So it is one of those things where, are people lucky? Yeah, but they ultimately created it. They are aware. They're looking for those opportunities versus somebody that's like, nothing good ever comes to me. Oh, there's another problem. Well, guess what? It's a self-fulfilling prophecy. So such a good question, Damon. I absolutely love that.
Yeah, I've through the years, I've run sales teams for, I don't know, a very long time. And you see the underperformers a lot of times saying, oh, that person got lucky, that lead came in, or that person called back. No, you know what they did? They showed up, they put in the effort, they struck out, they got back up, and they created their own luck. And I can't think about it exactly, but I love Dave Thomas from Wendy's had a great quote about there's no such thing as luck, you create your own luck.
So true. It is just fascinating because
it's so important too.
It's so important. And I get it. When you're down at things, it's hard to focus on it, but what you focus on expands. So it's literally one of the best questions. I love that.
So you and I, as we wrap up here, you and I, you love your family, your wife, your kids, and I love my wife, my kids. And what do you want your legacy to be, let's say, for your kids, in regard to, let's just say, how you were looked at as a father and a leader?
I want my kids to look back and to say that Dad gave it everything to these kids, that and I don't mean materialistically, I mean time. He was present. He told them how much I love them, and that when I was with them, I was genuinely with them. That wasn't always the case, by the way. When they were younger, I certainly was doing the emails on my phone. I was around them all the time, but I wasn't really there. And I would say for the last at least 15 years. I think I stopped when TJ was about 3, and I said, enough. This time's going by so fast. I want to make sure that they know when I'm with them, I'm fully with them, and that they feel that I loved them no matter what was going on. To me, that is legacy, and I'm very proud of my boys, man. They are kind of my everything. My wife and I are very blessed with these amazing human beings that we are part of creating, and just for them to look back and say, Mom and Dad loved us, and they were completely present. That would be the legacy I'd like to leave.
That's wonderful. What else would you like to leave our listeners with? I know we talked about a bunch of great stuff, but is there one specific thing?
We touched on it. What I would hope everybody does is start to take care of yourself. And the ladies, if you're listening, especially, 99% of the female clients I work with, when I ask this question, what did you do for you? They always answer the house, the kid, the dog, the email, the car. I mean, it's such a litany of things before them. Start to take care of you first so that you can be the best mom. You can be the best dad. You can be the best person that you want to be. You need to take care of yourself. So that would be the last thing, brother, that I hope people give themselves the opportunity, gives themselves the grace to say, you know what? I matter. I'm going to take care of myself every single day. And I'm absolutely worthy of that, because now it's going to help you flourish in your career, in your relationships, and your health. And you are so deserving of it.
Thanks, JM, man. It's been awesome. We talked about how to overcome limiting beliefs, what winning looks like, overcoming failure, getting back up, and taking care of your people, the importance of core values and getting everybody on the same page for the same mission, and self-leadership and taking care of yourself. So thank you so much, my friend. Where can our listeners connect with you at?
Yeah, brother. Thank you for having me. You're an awesome host. You ask great questions. letsgowin.com would be the best place to find me. I would also say go check out the Let's Go Win podcast. Damon's going to be on, and just an incredible guest. So absolutely connect. I love connecting with people. I love doing my part to inspire people to live their best life. So letsgowin.com. I'd love to connect with you.
All right. Well, thank you. And for our listeners out there, do me a favor. If you know somebody who struggles from limiting beliefs or needs to maybe change up their daily routine, please send them this episode. I mean, JM's so inspiring. And so let's check it out. And until next time, everybody, stay curious, keep learning. Have a great day.
It's just not possible to get the best out of your people if you're not being customized to them and having those deliberate conversations. And this is where I'm very big on what